In the year 2245, humanity stood on the brink of its greatest achievement, the discovery of a new galaxy. After centuries of exploration, the stars of the Milky Way had finally surrendered their secrets. The outermost edges had been mapped, and human colonies flourished on dozens of distant planets. But the cosmos had more to offer, and a new, uncharted galaxy beckoned. The Galactic Council, a union of Earth's most powerful nations and the thriving off-world colonies, had sanctioned Project Horizon. Its goal was simple: lead humanity to the stars beyond the Milky Way, claim a new galaxy, and establish a new home for the species. This was no mere colonization effort. It was the dawn of a new chapter in human history. A fleet of ships, led by the U.S. Horizon, a massive, state-of-the-art vessel, was tasked with the journey. Its captain, Nathaniel Drake, was a seasoned leader, decorated with countless medals and renowned for his ability to think under pressure. But even Drake had his reservations about the mission. The journey would take decades, maybe even centuries, and they knew little of what lay on the other side of the void. The first wave of settlers, scientists, engineers, and military personnel were handpicked from every corner of human civilization. Together they would forge a path into the unknown, and one day the children born aboard the Horizon might live to see the first human city in another galaxy. But there were risks that no one could ignore. Humanity's first foray into the new galaxy would not be unopposed. The Council had intercepted strange signals, garbled, fragmented communications, originating from deep space. The faint traces suggested a civilization out there, but nothing concrete had ever been confirmed. The Council's analysts were divided. Some believed the signals were remnants of an ancient, long-dead race, while others feared an unknown enemy was watching them, waiting for their arrival. But for now those thoughts remained in the back of their minds. The fleet launched, leaving Earth behind, their final transmissions echoing into the vast expanse of space. As the U.S. Horizon and its sister ships made the jump to warp speed, a quiet excitement spread through the fleet. Commander Iris Kincaid, Drake's second-in-command, stood at the helm, her hands steady on the controls. She had always dreamed of seeing new worlds, exploring the mysteries of space. But this mission was different. The stakes were higher than anything she had ever known. No one knew what awaited them, and the fear of the unknown gnawed at her. Yet, there was a spark of hope as the stars blurred into streaks of light outside the viewport. They were no longer in the Milky Way. They were heading into the future. Drake had spent years preparing for this moment. The crew was well-trained, and the ship itself was a marvel of human engineering. A vast, self-sustaining city that could carry thousands across the stars. Advanced AI systems would ensure their safety, and an armament of advanced weaponry would guard them against any threat. But even with all that technology, there was no escaping the reality that they were pioneers, stepping into a place no human had ever dared to venture. As the fleet traveled deeper into the unknown, the once familiar stars began to shift. The universe outside their windows became strange and unfamiliar. Unseen cosmic forces tugged at the ships, pulling them into a dark expanse where even the brightest stars seemed dimmer. It was a vast emptiness, a gulf of darkness that felt endless. But then, in the distance, a faint glimmer caught their attention. A planet. Not just any planet. A world teeming with life, circling a distant sun that looked uncannily like their own. It was the first sign of something real, something that could lead to the thriving civilization they had dreamed of. A new world, full of possibilities. Humanity's new home was within reach. The crew of the U.S. Horizon knew that they were about to make history. But with this discovery came another question. Who else was out there in the darkness of this new galaxy? The question loomed large as the fleet approached the mysterious planet. Whatever awaited them, humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet, and only time would reveal the full scope of what lay ahead. To be continued? The U.S. Horizon and its fleet of ships slowly maneuvered toward the planet, their advanced engines humming softly as they drew closer to their new home. Captain Nathaniel Drake stood at the bridge, his eyes scanning the viewscreen focused on the planet below. It was a world of vibrant blues and greens, continents scattered across vast oceans. The atmosphere was rich with oxygen, the climate temperate, and there was a delicate but unmistakable pulse of life. Distance to orbit, Commander? Drake's voice was calm, but there was a certain tension in it. Approaching now, Captain, Commander Iris Kincaid replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. We'll be in orbit in 5 minutes. The planet, though beautiful, remained a mystery. No signals had been received from it. No radio transmissions or signs of an intelligent civilization. It was almost as if it had been untouched by any outside influence. Keep scanning all channels, Drake instructed. I want to be sure. We don't know what's down there yet. Kincaid nodded, her face set in determination. She had a sinking feeling. Everything was too perfect, too serene. It was the calm before a storm, and everyone on the bridge could feel it. As the fleet settled into orbit, they began to deploy their reconnaissance drones. These small, agile machines would begin mapping the planet's surface, gathering atmospheric data, and searching for signs of life. It was standard procedure, but it wasn't enough to calm the rising sense of unease that had spread through the crew. Hours passed and nothing significant had been found. There were no signs of advanced technology, no artificial structures on the surface. The world appeared to be a pristine paradise, devoid of any human-like inhabitants. But something about the silence felt wrong. There had to be something or someone out there. It was then that the unexpected happened. One of the drones sent out a pulse, a strange anomaly that had never been encountered before. It was a signal, but unlike anything they had seen in their long history of space exploration. The drone's transmission was interrupted, its systems failing as if something had hacked into it. The crew on the U.S. Horizon scrambled to analyze the data. "We're receiving a message," said Lieutenant Voss, a young communications officer, his voice shaking. "It's coming from the planet's surface. It's not a simple signal. It's structured. It's intelligent. Patch it through," Drake ordered, his heart skipping a beat. The bridge fell silent as the alien transmission crackled to life. The words were unintelligible, a jumble of strange sounds and symbols. It was a language, unmistakably. But it wasn't human. It was something entirely foreign, too complex to understand immediately. The alien message pulsed with a rhythmic pattern, almost as if it were waiting for a response. And then, as if to answer a question that had never been asked, a bright light flashed on the view screen. A sudden, blinding burst from the surface of the planet, and then the signal was gone. The crew's confusion turned to alarm. "What was that?" Commander Kincaid asked, her voice tight with concern. "It wasn't a natural phenomenon," Lieutenant Voss replied. "Someone or something on that planet just communicated with us and they're waiting for a reply. They're aware of our presence. Prepare a landing party," Drake ordered, his mind racing. "We need answers and we need them now." As the crew scrambled to prepare for the first human landing on an alien world, the weight of the moment settled over them. For centuries, humans had dreamt of making first contact with alien life. But this was not some peaceful meeting of minds, or a simple discovery of another race. There was a sense of hostility in the alien message, a challenge that could not be ignored. This wasn't just about colonizing a new world, it was about navigating the unknown, and the unknown, it seemed, was far from welcoming. And with that realization, the crew of the U.S. Horizon prepared to take their first steps into the alien world. But as they did, they could not shake the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, they were no longer the only ones who had the right to call the stars their home. To be continued? The U.S. Horizon hovered just above the surface of the mysterious planet, its engines humming softly as it settled into a stationary orbit. The air on the bridge was thick with anticipation as Captain Nathaniel Drake, Commander Iris Kincaid, and a small team of specialists prepared to board one of the landing shuttles. The crew had been briefed, but the uncertainty of what awaited them weighed heavily on their minds. The alien signal that had pulsed through the stars now seemed like a prelude to something far more dangerous. "All systems are go for landing," Lieutenant Voss reported. "The atmosphere is stable, no signs of hostile activity, yet." "Good," Drake said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at him. "Let's get to the surface and see what we're dealing with. We're all in this together." Kincaid gave a brief nod of agreement. As the doors to the shuttle bay opened, a faint tremor of unease passed through her. This planet had shown no signs of advanced life on its surface. No cities, no roads, no technology. Just untouched wilderness. Yet the signal, that strange pulse of communication, implied there was intelligence here. And that intelligence was waiting for them. The shuttle, a sleek, versatile craft designed for planetary landings, descended into the planet's thick atmosphere. Outside the window, the world below unfolded, a patchwork of dense forests, sprawling plains, and jagged mountain ranges. Everything was alive, vibrant with color and teeming with life. Yet there was no sign of civilization. The land was wild, untouched. As they neared the surface, a clearing came into view. A perfect, circular area within the forest, like it had been carved deliberately. There was no visible sign of damage, no structure. Yet the clearing seemed out of place amidst the natural landscape. It was as if someone, or something, had prepared it for them. The shuttle's landing gear touched down with a soft thud, and a sense of finality washed over the crew. They were here. "Stay sharp," Drake ordered, his voice low but commanding. "We're stepping into the unknown. I don't care if it's beautiful or peaceful down there, something is off and I want eyes on every angle." The crew disembarked from the shuttle, the air cool and crisp against their skin. The forest around them was eerily silent, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. No birds, no animals. Just the sound of their own footsteps. As they stepped further into the clearing, the ground beneath them hummed softly and Kincaid's eyes narrowed. There was something hidden beneath the soil. It wasn't just natural terrain, it felt manipulated, altered. "I don't like this," Kincaid muttered under her breath. "Agreed," Drake replied, his gaze sweeping over the area. "This is no ordinary land." They reached the center of the clearing and there, standing in the middle, was a stone structure, smooth, perfectly round, and pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The stone itself seemed to shimmer in the light, changing color with each passing second. It was alien, unlike anything they'd seen in the Milky Way. Drake took a cautious step forward. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. This structure had been placed here intentionally. But by whom? And for what purpose? The answer came quickly, but not in a way anyone expected. A low rumble vibrated through the ground. The stone before them began to crack, and then, as if it had been waiting for this very moment, the structure split open. From within a figure emerged. Tall and imposing, covered in dark, shifting energy. Its face was obscured, but there was no mistaking the authority in its stance. "Welcome to our world," the figure intoned, its voice a deep, resonant echo in the still air. It was not a human voice, not even remotely, but it carried with it a strange familiarity. Drake stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm but not drawing it. "Who are you? What is this place?" The figure's response was unsettlingly calm. "We are the keepers, the ones who guard the truth of this galaxy. And you are trespassing." The crew stood frozen, the air suddenly thick with tension. The alien's words sent a shockwave through the group. Trespassing? They had no intention of invading, but clearly something had gone terribly wrong. "We came in peace," Drake said, his voice unwavering. "We are explorers looking for a new home for our people." The keeper's voice shifted, dark and ominous. "Your kind always seeks, always takes. But you do not understand the cost of what you seek. This galaxy is not meant for you." Before Drake could respond, the ground beneath them trembled once more, and the keeper raised its hand. From the depths of the planet, a swarm of shimmering lights erupted, filling the air like a vast, approaching storm. The first wave of hostile unknowns had begun. To be continued? The air crackled with the strange energy emanating from the keeper as the swarm of lights grew closer, swirling around them like a storm of fireflies. The crew of the U.S. Horizon braced themselves, their eyes wide with shock and growing fear. They had expected many things. First contact, a peaceful exchange, perhaps even a hostile response. But this was something else entirely. Captain Drake stepped forward, his pulse quickening, but he maintained his calm. The keeper had made its intentions clear, but this was still the first contact with an alien species, and humanity's survival depended on making the right decisions now. "We don't want to fight," Drake said, his voice steady. "We just want to understand. We came here to learn, to live, and to find a place for our people. We're not your enemies." The keeper didn't respond right away. Instead, it tilted its head, observing the group with an air of ancient wisdom. The glowing swarm around them had stopped, but it hovered like an invisible threat, waiting for a signal to act. "Your people have always sought to expand," the keeper spoke again, its voice like a ripple of sound in the stillness of the clearing. "You believe the universe belongs to you, that the stars are yours to conquer. But you do not understand the balance. The galaxy has already been claimed." The words sank deep into the minds of the crew. The keeper's warning was chilling, its meaning clear. They were not welcome, and the galaxy they had hoped to explore and colonize might already be under the control of an unknown power. And worse, their very presence, humanity's arrival, might be a catalyst for something far worse than a simple territorial dispute. "We don't want to conquer," Commander Kincaid said, her voice tinged with frustration. "We want to build. To work with you if that's what it takes. There's no need for violence." The keeper's dark, shifting form seemed to pulse with energy, and for a moment, the ground beneath them rumbled again. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the bones of the crew. It was as though the very planet itself was responding to their words, or perhaps rejecting them. "You speak of peace, yet your actions tell another story," the keeper replied. "You have already crossed the threshold of our domain, bringing your fleets and your machines. You come to take what is not yours. Drake's heart raced as the words settled in. He could feel it now, that primal truth beneath the surface. This was not a simple misunderstanding. The Keeper and its kind saw humanity's presence as a violation, an intrusion on something far older and more sacred than they had anticipated. Then why did you send us the signal? Lieutenant Voss asked, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and confusion. Why did you contact us if you wanted us to stay away? The Keeper seemed to contemplate the question, its form rippling as if it were shifting between dimensions, glimpses of its true form fleeting and incomprehensible. To test you, the Keeper answered finally, its voice solemn. To see if you would respect the warning. To see if you would leave or if you would insist on claiming what does not belong to you. You failed? A silent dread fell over the crew. What did failed mean? Were they doomed already? But Drake refused to let fear overtake him. He had been in situations far more dangerous than this, and he wasn't about to let an ancient alien entity intimidate him into surrender. They had come for peace and he would fight for that peace if necessary. Then we'll leave, Drake said firmly, though there was a knot of uncertainty in his stomach. We'll go back to our ships and we'll never return. We won't interfere. The Keeper's glowing presence flickered for a moment as though weighing his words. The light from the swarm flickered like distant stars in a cosmic sky, but it didn't advance or retreat. You speak as though your kind understands the word leave, the Keeper said. But it is not your will that determines the outcome. The galaxy will not tolerate your presence. It is not just us you have awakened. The air became heavy, and the humming vibrations of the planet seemed to intensify. The ground beneath them trembled violently, shaking their footing. The skies above began to cloud, the sun dimming as if the very planet itself was reacting to the Keeper's words. Listen to me, Captain Drake, the Keeper continued, its tone now even more ominous. There are forces older than you can imagine. Forces that govern the fate of this galaxy. You will not be allowed to remain here. Before Drake could respond, the Keeper raised its hand. A wave of energy cascaded through the air like a tidal wave, pushing the crew back, forcing them to their knees. The swarm of lights intensified, swirling around them with blinding speed. The world around them seemed to bend and twist, reality warping like a dream. Suddenly everything stopped. The Keeper vanished, its form dissolving into the air, leaving nothing but the echo of its warning. The crew lay on the ground, breathless and stunned. The air was still again, but the weight of the moment pressed down on them. Their mission, their hopes of finding a new home, had been shattered in an instant. Drake struggled to his feet, his body sore from the impact of the force. He looked at the others, his mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. We need to get back to the ship, Drake said, his voice low but urgent. Now. Commander Kincaid nodded grimly, her face pale but resolute. The Keeper had made one thing clear: humanity's presence here was a threat, not just to this planet but to the galaxy itself. As they made their way back to the shuttle, the crew was silent. The weight of the Keeper's words echoed in their minds. The galaxy was not a vast, empty expanse to be colonized. It was a place of power, and those who sought to claim it would find themselves facing forces far beyond their understanding. To be continued? The shuttle doors closed with a mechanical hiss as the crew of the U.S. Horizon quickly boarded and strapped in. The atmosphere was tense, thick with unspoken questions and the dread of what had just transpired on the surface. No one spoke as the shuttle ascended, lifting from the planet's surface and soaring into the atmosphere. It was as though they could still feel the lingering presence of the Keeper, that force that had warned them in such an alien, terrifying way. Captain Nathaniel Drake sat at the helm, his hands steady on the controls but his mind elsewhere. What had they just encountered? The Keeper's words echoed in his head. You have failed. The sense of foreboding was overwhelming. Was this merely a test or was there something more? Something darker waiting for them? Captain, Commander Iris Kincaid finally broke the silence. What now? The Keeper made it clear that we're not welcome. Should we continue with the mission? Drake didn't immediately answer. He could see the tension in her eyes, she was struggling with the same thoughts, the same confusion. The rest of the crew looked to him for guidance, but what could he offer? They had come here to explore, to find a new future for humanity, but the universe had just shown them its dark side. A side they had never considered. We don't have a choice, Drake finally said, his voice low but resolute. We still need to find a place to settle. Our colonies are running out of resources and we've got millions back home counting on us. We'll find a way to make this work, but we need answers and we need them now. We can't go back empty-handed. Kincaid looked at him, her brow furrowing. But what if there's more to the Keeper's warning? What if we're not meant to stay here at all? Maybe we've made a mistake. Maybe we've awakened something that's better left to sleep. We don't know enough yet, Drake replied firmly. The Keeper's warning was clear. But we've been on the edge of discovery for too long to turn back now. The galaxy is vast, and we're not giving up just because one entity doesn't want us here. We'll adapt. Kincaid nodded, but there was doubt in her eyes. The mission had become something else entirely, and they all knew it. The galaxy was not empty, it was filled with power, ancient and unforgiving, and humanity was intruding upon it. As the shuttle ascended toward the U.S.S horizon, orbiting above the planet, Drake ordered an emergency meeting. The fleet had been on standby ever since the crew's initial descent to the surface, and now it was time to regroup and discuss their next move. When they arrived on the ship, the conference room was filled with tension. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, and the silence was thick with the weight of what had happened. Drake addressed them all, his voice steady but resolute. What we've learned today is that we are not alone in this galaxy. The Keeper, or whatever it is, warned us that we have crossed into a domain we do not understand. But we still have a mission to complete. We cannot abandon humanity's future over one threat. With all due respect, Captain, Lieutenant Voss interjected, his voice shaky, we don't know what we're dealing with. The Keeper called us trespassers. And those things, it felt like they were watching us. The energy they emitted, it wasn't just a warning. It was a demonstration of their power. Drake nodded, acknowledging the point. He had felt it too, the raw, unsettling force that had rippled through the air when the Keeper had raised its hand. It was as if the entire planet had come alive with a power that humanity was woefully ill-prepared to confront. That's why we need to be smart about this, Drake said, looking around the room. We'll gather more data. We've already detected some unusual signals coming from deep within the planet's core, and the Keeper mentioned something about forces older than we can imagine. We need to find out what that means. Commander Kincaid spoke up, her expression serious. We can't ignore the possibility that we're dealing with something far more dangerous than we realize. The Keeper's warning wasn't just about us but about the galaxy itself. If it was protecting something, some ancient secret, what are we actually up against? And if we persist, what will the consequences be? I don't know, Drake said, frustration creeping into his voice. But we're going to find out. We've come this far and we've got to move forward. We can't afford to turn back. This galaxy won't wait for us. Kincaid exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Voss, who remained silent, deep in thought. They all knew the risks, but there was no turning back now. Later that night, Drake stood alone on the ship's observation deck, gazing out at the vastness of space. The stars twinkled serenely in the distance, but it was a cold, indifferent kind of beauty. The mission, which had once seemed like an exciting leap into the unknown, now felt like an ominous step into a domain far beyond human comprehension. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. The warning from the Keeper echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just crossed a line, one that could never be undone. The galaxy was far more complicated than they had imagined, and the forces at play were far older than anything they could understand. Still, they couldn't turn back. The future of humanity depended on them finding a new home. They had to push forward no matter the cost. Suddenly, the communication console on the observation deck buzzed. Drake turned, surprised, and quickly walked over to the console. It was a priority message from the fleet sensor array. Drake's heart skipped a beat as he read the message. Unidentified fleet detected approaching our position. They're not human. His stomach sank. The unknown had found them, and it was far closer than they had imagined. To be continued?